I'm Janan Derso, and this is Altar Map, Part 1. Demystify your home altar and connect with God. In this session, I'm going to share my story called Sunflowers in the Garden, how to ground into God, religion and spirituality, the intention of prayer, daily remembrance, and forgiveness practices, as well as how to start demystifying your home altar. And at the end, I'll provide a link if you need a session to get started with your altar practice. But first, my story, like why I'm even explaining any of this to you, is because I had a really beautiful experience and I'd love to share it with you. And maybe you can find your story in this. I looked out at the field with wonder. The sunflowers towered over my head, their faces tracked with the sun's movements, and so I learned to as well. Everything I learned that late summer and fall, I learned from this garden, Mothership Farm, and from deeply listening to God's voice. Each plant taught me a valuable way in which to hear the words of the Creator, the process of showing up and saying, I am here to serve you, provided me with the great dawn of hope. I could rise again if the sun could. I would grow towards the sky if the plants would. Together, we made our journey through the cycle of a sunflower. The life cycle of a plant can teach you anything you want to know. You merely have to inquire. The path to wisdom is purely inquisition. The right questions will lead you to the answers where knowledge and furthermore connection is embodied. What is it that broke your hope? What pain resides in your heart, in your neck? What anger lies under your skin? How are you severed from the very thing that brings meaning to your life? These are the type of questions most people would rather shy away from because the answer requires something of you. It is the very offering of your pain, your sadness, your grief that makes the garden grow. It is the compost to create the most fertile soil in the land. It is this loss that illuminates how you will move forward into the found. This wasn't my first loss. Please know that I didn't wake up and know what to do the first time intense trauma struck suddenly. This time was one of many that the altar was the answer. And my idea of an altar expanded immensely as I harnessed the cosmic energy in the practice. In this picture, here is another example of the divine altar that I made every Friday. Your offering with the elements is in the devotion to your showing up. I will show you how and explain the biodynamic calendar code as the map key solution in another video. The point here is that your healing comes from the connection with your altar, where you lay your emotions on the table so you no longer have to carry them. The release only happens when you surrender the grief to be lifted outside of your body. When you hold these feelings in your physical body, the pain makes lines on your face that hold it in place. The past becomes the burden you carry because you think it's your teacher. Rather, God dwells in timelessness. You can only access this power in the present because all healing happens in the present moment. The layers each peel back, sometimes one at a time, other times a miracle of relief and a full pivot comes. Everyone's journey with grief is different. This formula I'm about to show you helps move it out of you. It's the way to stop storing offense upon offense and let the game of life dissolve back to the soil and allow love to restore the soil in your soul. The Savior is in the soil for your soul. Every day you wake up and it's a fresh start at life. When you carry grief and grievances, it can feel like a giant mountain you are hiking up. So I'll share how to establish your altar practice of laying it down outside of yourself. The layers of healing begin with communication and connection points throughout your day to God's voice, which can be done at your physical altar, nature, or the altar in your mind. The daily practice of inviting God in allows you to hear your divine instructions. You don't need to go to a specific building to hear these, but you can if that is what truly supports you. Religion has set the tone for many of these rituals, but do people embody these practices every day? If you grew up religious or you found one that suits you in your adult life, then think of these practices for a moment. How does your religion encourage you to have touch points with God in order to stay aligned with the divine will or even the higher self? In Islam, a devout Muslim prays 5 times a day. There is often a holy book that helps people set the tone for their practice. This guidance can be instrumental in cultivating the divine communication with God. Some people go to church or temple once a week or attend a prayer group to stay connected to God's word. If that's working well for you, then I bet you aren't reading this right now. I'm pretty sure I'm speaking to someone looking for more to integrate faith and peace. The intention of prayer. How does your intent interact with your prayers? When you make time to pray, you say, "Yes, God of my heart, please come into my mind and heal my pain. I lift up my burdens to you." The prayer is your initiation. God doesn't come uninvited, and God is always there, but it has to be you. These conversations with God are the next step when your prayer moves from your heart to your daily action. God, what will you have me do today? What will you have me do next? Prayer isn't a wish list. It isn't a transaction. It isn't a one-sided conversation. Please give me more sugar. It's when you step back to receive your instructions. You get knocked down in life and you rise again because you invite this holy connection in with each new breath. Have you bridged your prayer and your purpose in life? When you live a life from your soul purpose, the one God has designed perfectly for you, your very existence feels aligned in your daily action steps. Most basic education doesn't teach the student how to truly understand the cosmos and then your place in it. Yet you must be here for a reason, which is a very grounding perspective in order to then grasp the true meaning of life. What if you know what you're here to show up for and how to contribute? The question may be too big yet. If your heart is hardened from life experiences, you may have to tend to it so you can open to warmth again. There are whole books written on the key to happiness and a warm, loving heart. I'm going to cut to the chase. It's forgiveness. Hardened hearts, come closer. I know the world hasn't always been kind to you. Maybe you became disheartened when you were very young. Someone lied to you. You lost trust. The door closed to that pericardium heart envelope as it became too painful to love and be loved. The path of forgiveness is so grand, deeply rewarding, and an all-time cure. There are layers as the symptoms return to ultimately heal you from the ills. The ultimate goal is to remember God's love for you. It is the only true, unchanging source. I am reminded that forgiveness is learned, not inherent. Practicing forgiveness becomes easier as the muscle develops. Let's do a short visualization. Think back to your endearing memories when you visited spiritual or holy places. Do you see where there is some central place where people make offerings, where they use symbolism to interact with the invisible field to connect with the Creator God? People use altars as a way to open their hearts into their prayers. The incense, the water, the flowers, the fruit, it's all part of that symbolism. You can unify the repetition of a prayer, like a mantra, at a sacred space to bring you into your heart space. So, one example of an open hearted individual is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He's known as the embodiment of compassion, recognized for 14 consecutive lifetimes, and we're blessed to be alive while he's alive, in my opinion. Buddhism is, of course, not even a religion that has one God. Some monotheists may see these symbols as idols. I use them as symbols of offering to God, not as an idol. Instead, I learned about offerings from their tradition as a path to integration. So at a Buddhist temple, these candles, the bowls of water, a bell, a dorje, fresh fruits and flowers, and lots of incense are a part of the enacting of connection from their hearts to his heart. These surround his picture because he's a significant teacher who embodies qualities that are worth emulation. His people offer devotion to those qualities because they're worthy qualities. The goal isn't to honor the person, and he has said this, as much as the qualities so we can remember what is holy. So why do people make altars? God doesn't need our gratitude, but we need to practice giving thanks. And the ritual is the practice of offering to the chalice of your altar, of your mind, whatever it takes to clear your ego, open your heart, and align you with God's plan for you. People make altars for comfort, for connection. And in times of challenge, that's exactly what the heart and the mind needs, a place to lay it. So it's not about idols. Please know that's not my directive here. It can also be demonstrated without objects through the altar in your mind to God. You don't need anything. And some people have religious injuries, so I lay out the symbolism with nature first as the outlet for connection to the invisible. Ultimately, healing your relationship to God mends the wounds of illusion, and it returns you to the truth of one perfect love. Resting in this love allows for the gentle return to your Creator. Here's another personal story. I grew up a spiritual seeker, bopping around from church to synagogue, checking out what was around me. My kind parents would dutifully drop me off and pick me up from all of these events that I chose to go to. I would go on to find spiritual texts of all denominations and study religion in college. My mind felt like a very muddled place, so Tibetan Buddhism was the practice that gave me the gift of meditation instruction and yoga. I learned to sit and stretch for hours and follow my breath. And I was blessed with the experience of hiking to the top of a mountain in Tibet where I sat in Milarepa's cave. It was recorded he attained enlightenment in this cave, and I gathered there was something profound here for me too. It didn't happen at that moment, however. What I didn't know yet was all this practice was setting me up with a directive tool. When someone close to me transitioned, my meditation practice would be the tool that would steady my mind. The ritual of sitting at my altar every day and reciting mantras was so ingrained that by the time this tragedy struck, I went into an almost trance-like experience. My mind had practiced what to do. I literally sat down at my altar and did the same thing I did every other morning, and I instantly found peace. The phone call I had just received didn't change that it was time to tame my mind. Rather, it showed me the importance of this daily practice. There's a wise teacher, Pema Chodron, and she once said, when you're in the rose garden, it's good. But when you're not in the rose garden, it's also still got to be good. Something clicked. I realized that even though I should be falling apart, I actually felt more together than those around me. That I could be calm and show up for life without being overwhelmed by my emotions. And it's not to say I didn't feel emotions. I did. However, I allowed them to come in and out like clouds passing across the sky. This story sets the tone for another death 20 years later that I reference and a decade prior. Also, I call these experiences my locker combinations because they unlocked the way for me to find peace amidst the chaos. So what happens when you don't have an altar? Well, enter my 14-year-old self. An end of life struck my two friends late one night. When I heard the news, my devastation had nowhere to land. I didn't know about altars. My religion hopping had just produced puddles. I had no well to draw from. Unfortunately, I misinterpreted the incident as God turning his back on me, which wasn't true. It was a series of cause and effect events. I didn't truly heal from this until a few years later. And in that time, I felt so lost and confused for my teenage years after that incident. My heart ached with a larger hole than I knew what to do with. I looked around searching and knew life was more than what was offered. Modern life had left me empty. I would have to be patient until I was ready for the teachings later in life. In the meantime, angels surrounded me while I figured it out. If you're still figuring it out, if you're beginning now, welcome in. God did not turn his back on you. The law of extension says these lessons in life are what awaken you, that it is in pain and loss that you find the truth, the love, and the way home. When we access the Great Spirit, the pain and suffering of loss you have experienced have a place to land outside of your body. Without this practice, the shock of the experiences tend to land inside your body. People carry it in their lungs, large intestines, face, luggage, and heaviest of all, their heart. And this session is an invitation to lay it out on the table, and in this case, the altar. So let's demystify it, starting your home altar. An altar is a place that gathers your intention while assisting divine connection in your home space, body temple, and the heavens of your mind. We once lived outside, connecting to these elements all the time. And now, since many of us are living predominantly inside, bringing the elements to your inner domain is crucial. Your altar is a representation for your connection with God. You can imbue your religion, nature, and spiritual practices into your altar. Really, it's all for your mind. A healed mind doesn't need anything but to remember. The key here is the altar is not a stagnant shrine or filled with idols. It's an interactive process for your connection with God. So in this teaching, it's about the tending to the objects that represent the elements daily. So honoring the elements of earth, fire, air, water, and ether so they can be incorporated into your life. They are not a religion, they are a connection point. The God of your heart is holy. Your religion is personal. And I am not here to tell you what or who to pray to, but I am here to say, pray. Pray every day. Pray as often as you can remember without strife or over efforting. Prayer is meant to soothe you and be the balm for your soul. I call this practice of devotion an altar map because it's the tending of your altar that connects you to hear God's voice. It's a connection point. It's a continuous one, and it's not a one-time thing. So for example, changing the water in your bowl on your altar each day is the practice of developing your connection with the water element, which is showing you life is flowing. You're keeping it fresh. It represents how you show up in your life. Like, what aspects of these offerings would you want to incorporate in your home? So I pose to you who already have an altar practice, how often do you connect with your altar? Seasonally, with the moon phase, when it needs to be dusted, when you want something? Now, does prayer connect you to symbols that align with your daily practices to stay connected to who you are and what you're here to do? The very reason religion helps people and why people develop spiritual practices is because of this. It's that connection to their home, their heart, their being. I want to encourage you to claim what's of value from your religion and bring it into this connection because this is where you're going to access it. Nevertheless, these practices may not have always been enough to help you heal from bigger traumas, especially if religion didn't help you in the past. I honor and recognize that you have gone through tough things, and you may need more tools to add to your prayer practice. I have some in the Altar Map workbook. You can explore that. You will find questions and answers there for you to communicate with the God of your heart. This is available to us because humans are not consumed with hunting and gathering as a species anymore, and we have time to process emotions. It could be from your childhood, it could be from your ancestral line, karmic patterns that you've inherited. In this process, you are invited into your whole healed self. All the solutions are available now through God. No prayer goes unanswered. Ask and you shall receive what you seek in the present. So I ask you, what is it you're seeking and what tools do you need? The prayerful cosmic integration with the God of your heart is this first stage of altar map. Now it's time to go deeper into the commitment of prayer. And I use this term God of your heart for the intention of inclusivity. So please substitute your word for who you call upon. I may rotate other words in for context, and I mean no harm or confusion. Spirituality and religion contain a myriad of personal practices, and the whole idea is that it has to connect you to what you hold faith in, to the God of your heart. So during the day, these practices either give you a break from what you're doing for the moment, or they bring you deeper into the present. So both of these can be extremely helpful depending upon what's going on in your life. I use the word practice to make this practical for you. The foundation is prayer, where you find peace again. When you make time for your spiritual practice, all spiritual paths talk about inviting the God of your heart into your rituals, which is really a word that means intentional acts of a sacred nature. If you don't invite God in, you're doing it alone. The sovereignty movement requires much more efforts, tricks, and potions than aligning with the ultimate source. The movement of being supported extends and invites the Holy Creator to lead and you to follow. For example, you can use symbols to represent things you're letting go of or to guide you home to God. The point is to move the energy out of you. Some people call it lifting up your problems so the restoration and the true healing can happen, which you cannot do alone, nor are you meant to. What a relief! There is an eternal source of love that you can tap into. There is an altar between you and God for you to lay it all out there and release every secret. For some reason, this may still feel too cryptic. It did for me as a youth. The act of sharing my problems with God is all I have to do. This prayer releases my burdens. It flew over me as a young adult too. And so symbols, being tactile, gave it form. And early on, my practice needed form. It's similar to when you teach a toddler words and bring a shared meaning to objects. Then at some point, you have to unlearn all the words and the forms in order to dissolve the illusion that's holding the stories of pain. But alas, life is a journey. Herein lies the script where you save all things to solve yourself. And that is such an exhausting looping retrograde. So we are going to shift and see how to live again. So if you're experiencing a wall that feels like it's preventing you from living a purposeful life, if you are stuck in the pain and the loss, then let's go deeper. Let's go deeper into it. We're going to walk down this path. If you are anything like my past self, I chased peace and joy for so long because I didn't even realize I was on the wrong playing field. It was clear I couldn't find it in the middle of the rat race, but it was disappointing when I didn't find it in the alternative lifestyle world either. I found that although the regenerative forest idea sounds wonderful, most of us are so stubborn to change and grow. It's through the daily practice of showing up that you actually engage with life. And this breakthrough came when I stepped out onto the earth with bare feet and invited in a cosmic scientific model. I would love to say life circumstances allowed me this grand shift, but alas, it was death. And as I did these seemingly mundane farming tasks, I would receive these giant insights. The instructions on how to live after such a loss came through and guided my will forward into divine will. This practice I will illustrate comes from a well-established science called biodynamic farming. The biodynamic element key, when deciphered and applied, is how to live in a divinely in tune way where the cosmic forces are embraced so you can succeed with more peace, intention, and prosperity. It keeps you focused on the daily showing up, which is the mystic path of connecting your soul purpose and your aligned action steps in all your projects. What unfolded through that journey humbled me to surrender my ego, my idea of legacy, and my whole lifestyle. It showed me how to show up every day to the earth and tend to the elements. In what could have been a very sad time of my unraveling, I found a comforting light in the biodynamic approach that connected me to the cosmos. The teaching, as above, so below, became embodied each day as the calendar told me what to tend to externally. It was a map to my internal landscape. When you add your daily tending movements to the altar map practice, the method expands into how to stop carrying emotions internally for your lifetime. The practice of placing each element on your altar gives you a physical representation as you tend to fire, earth, air, water, and ether. You lay your emotions down on the altar or the field. You connect to the elements to get the feelings out of you so you don't have long-term diseases from the trauma. You can do the same thing on the land that you steward in the practice of biodynamic farming. Emptying your body of emotions is the process of releasing them so that you can integrate your whole healed self on the path forward. Next, you need to find time for your prayer practice to connect to God. The most important step you can take towards your altar is making the time for it. You may not even need an altar. It's just symbolizing the space. But showing up is the commitment that I continue to emphasize in the pages of all of my books and all of my classes. Here's the invitation to check out the Altar Map workbook for more prompts and contemplations. These can be incorporated into your daily practice time. After, you can move into combining the altar map with the element map. The mindset comes in from my course, Mind Map, and the active reclaiming time comes through the time map. Then we add the sun and the moon cycles in our sun map and our moon map. It's a lot of layers. This is just the beginning, and I encourage you to go step by step. I'm here for you. If you are ready to start releasing those emotions, we can do a quick 20-minute session to get you started. You can find me at janan.com. Peace and more time.